In this lesson, we're going to look at buying, leasing, and leasing to own a vehicle. In particular, we're going to focus on explaining the difference between buying, leasing, and leasing to own a vehicle. And we're going to try to identify situations in which leasing or buying a vehicle is the better option. We're going to save the calculations for the next video. Our outcomes in this video are going to include describing and explaining various options for buying, leasing, and leasing to buy a vehicle, and to justify a decision related to buying, leasing, or leasing to buy a vehicle based on factors such as personal finances, intended use, maintenance, warranties, mileage, and insurance. You're going to find that this video is a bit different from the others. There's not going to be any calculation or anything of that nature. We're going to discuss what things you need to consider when you're looking to buy a car or use a car. So when you're buying a car, we're going to look at, would you rather buy new or used? There are reasons why you might buy new. When a car is fresh off the lot, then there's no previous owners, so you definitely know the history of the car. There's the new car smell and things of that nature. When you're buying used, typically they're cheaper. You may or may not know the history of the car. It may have had one or many owners. The more owners, the less likely you're going to know the history behind the car. But typically it's cheaper. We're going to look at something called depreciation in a car. In a new car, the depreciation is going to be much greater than in a used car. So the amount of value the car maintains over the years is going to not fall as much. We're going to look at how much can you afford. All right, so if you're buying new, chances are it's going to be more expensive than if you buy a used car. And how do you plan on paying? We're going to discuss this in more detail, but are you going to pay outright, or are you going to try to come up with some payment plan, come up with an agreement? And how much will insurance be on the vehicle? Because again, that's an important aspect to consider. When you buy a car, the cost of a car ownership does not just include the purchase price. Insurance is going to be charged every year, and it could be charged regularly throughout the year. You can pay it in a lump sum, or you can pay it in installments as well. But it's going to be an expense that is a requirement of ownership, that you have insurance on your car. So buying, like I said, new or used. There are reasons to buy new. There are reasons to buy used. Some of the main reasons, if you're buying new, well, you're definitely going to have to go to a dealer. But if you're buying used, you could either buy a car through a dealer, or you might buy a car through a private sale. That's, say, someone selling it from home, selling it themselves. In a situation such as that, there are things that you might have to worry about. For instance, in a dealer's used car, often you'll have a written history of the car, a Carfax. But it mightn't be as easy to come across a Carfax on a private sale if you're buying a car or a vehicle from someone's house. When you buy new, oftentimes the insurance, because the value of the car is higher, the insurance rates are going to be higher as well. So if you buy used, you're likely getting a deal on the price, and you're also getting a deal on the amount of insurance you're going to have to pay. And then there's also this idea of depreciation in a car. If you're buying new, the amount that the car loses value is going to be considerable early on. As the car gets older, the amount that it reduces in value is also a little bit less. So if you're buying used, your car is going to maintain the value that you bought it at for longer, as long as you, of course, keep it in good condition. Some other things to worry about with new cars and used cars. New cars, if it's built properly, probably will only have regular scheduled maintenance, whereas with used cars, there's always the possibility of something coming up out of the blue and totally unexpected. So your financial options when you're buying a car, this is for buying, of course, you can either purchase the car outright. So if you have enough cash on hand, you can pay the full purchase price plus tax, of course. In many private deals, this is probably going to be your only option. But with dealers, you can purchase outright. If you have the cash, you can pay them the full price up front, and then you own the car right away. Or another option is to make a down payment on the car, so a small sum of what the car is valued at, and then obtain a loan either through a bank or through the car's the dealership's financial services. So most dealers will have their own credit dealings. So that's another option. So finally, we can also look at dealer offers. Sometimes you'll see advertisements for no down payment, no interest, and greatly reduced prices. This usually happens at certain times of the year. For instance, when the new year's models are coming in, the dealers are often looking to offload the previous year's models. So when the new 2015 models, because I'm recording these videos in 2014, when the new 2015 models come into dealers, they're going to look to get rid of the 2014 models off their lot. So you're going to see reduced prices and incentives to have people buy those cars. Now, a lease is a bit different than buying is completely. When you buy a car, at the end of your payments, if you're making payment options, you own it. It's your car, and you can do what you like with it. But when you're leasing, it's a type of financing where you're making monthly payments, or it could be even more frequent payments than that. So you have a type of financing in which you pay for a vehicle for a specified amount of time. It's kind of like you're renting the car. So there are some things to consider when if you're considering leasing a car. Oftentimes, your lease rates will be cheaper than the purchase rate. You're going to want to consider the term of your lease. Often, car companies will give you options for a 2-, 3-, or 4-year lease. You're going to want to know what your lease rate is. How much are you going to be paying every payment, whether that's a monthly, a weekly, a bi-weekly payment, bi-monthly. You're going to want to know what is the amount you're going to pay out every payment. Oftentimes you're going to be required, because in a lease you're likely going to return the car, you have to pay a security deposit. And so that if you lease, the car dealership is going to attempt to sell the car again once the lease is up. So they're going to want to have the car in good condition. So one of the conditions they're going to have is a certain amount of kilometers allowed over the term of the lease. So typical options would be 16,000 or 20,000 or 25,000 kilometers allowed per year. And the more kilometers you want per year, that's going to cause the value of the car to reduce over the term of the lease. So the amount you're going to pay in your lease rate is going to increase for every increase in your kilometer allowance. A delivery charge. So to have the car delivered, there's going to be a price to pay. Insurance rates, we're going to look at that, I think, more comprehensively in another video. But there are certain requirements in buying insurance when you're leasing a car, due to the fact that you are possibly returning the car to the dealer, that they require certain types of insurance on the car. That isn't necessarily a requirement when you're buying it yourself. Insurance is going to be a requirement either way, but the type of insurance you're required to obtain in a lease is a bit different. And of course, there's an option to purchase. So at the end of your lease, you may decide to buy the car, or you may decide to return it. So if you return it to the vehicle, if you return the vehicle to the dealer, then your obligation to that car is done. But at the end of a lease, if you do decide to return your vehicle to the dealer, they're going to do an inspection on the car, and you're going to be charged for any damages that you might incur. For instance, if you have bad tires on the car, if your tires are worn too much, you'll be required to replace them. If you have any scratches or dents that are larger than normal wear you would expect from normal wear of a car, then you'd have to pay for the repair. If there's any chips in your windshield or things of that nature, you're going to be charged for fixing those. If you do any damage to the inside of your car, if it's extremely dirty and the car company is going to have to clean your car, they'll charge you for that. So there's all kinds of little things that you'd have to consider when you're returning your car at the end of a lease. They want the car to be in a sellable condition if it's returned to them. And you can choose to buy the vehicle from the dealer. It's at a previously set price. The price, they call it the residual value of the car after the term of the lease. That's negotiated at the beginning of the lease, although there's never an obligation for you to take that. It's just an option that you're allowed. So when you have an option such as that, we call it leasing to own or leasing to buy. So when you're leasing to own, basically you lease your car just like you would normally lease a car, but at the end we have this agreed upon value of the car, expected value of the car at the end of the lease. At the beginning of the lease, you can decide, you agree to this negotiated value, and when it comes time to return the car, you can decide, like for instance, if the cost of going over on kilometers, for instance, or any damages to the car that you would have to pay for, you can decide that, you know what, I think I'd rather just buy the car from you rather than pay you for all these additional things, because maybe the car worked for you. So at the end of your lease, you're going to decide to pay for the car. There's no obligation to do it, but it is an option that you're provided when you return a car for a lease. So this residual value is that agreed upon value. So if you buy a car, say for instance, a brand new car, you lease it for $25,000. At the end of a 4-year lease, you may have agreed that the value of that car will now be $10,000. So when you return the car, you still owe $10,000 on that car if you want to buy it. Often the interest rates that they provide are a little bit higher than they would for purchasing a new car, and again we'll get into that in later videos. But it is an option for you to buy the car that you've been leasing. Some other things to worry about: maybe after the end of your lease, your warranty is up. So that means that now any certain types of problems that might come up in your car will have to come out of pocket. So we're looking at maintenance of an older vehicle then. We have a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old car that may or may not have warranty coverage. So will that be an additional unexpected expense at some time? So these are things you have to consider if you want to lease to own your car. So to summarize, there are 3 options for obtaining a vehicle. We can either buy or lease, or when we lease, we can decide at the end to purchase our car, which is a lease to own. And no one can really tell you what is the best options for you. The idea in this video is to try to get you thinking about some things that you may have to consider when deciding whether or not the best option for you is leasing or buying or leasing to own. So you must consider what's best for you after weighing many factors, including the costs that you might have to incur, your insurance rates, your usage, and all these types of things.